It is my pleasure to introduce from the Department of Indiana, the National Commander of the American Legion, Commander James Koutz.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and please be seated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today for this year's Commander's Call. At this time, it gives me a great honor to introduce some of our past national commanders here with us today. Throughout our long history, the American Legion has been blessed with outstanding leadership, and we are extremely fortunate to have several of our most recent leaders with us here today. Will all the past national commanders please rise or wave and be recognized? Thank you, gentlemen, for your leadership and steadfast support of our organization. It is an honor to follow in your footsteps. Next, I would like to introduce my National Vice Commanders with me here today. Jeanette Ray, Nevada. John E. Nealon of New Hampshire. Glenn A. Heckman, Ohio. James A. Holland, South Carolina. David R. Hall, West Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, these National Vice Commanders are proven leaders and represent the American Legion every day through the hard work and dedication they devote to this great organization. I am extremely proud of them, and you should be too. And they will be right there by your sides as we deliver the American Legion's legislative priorities to our lawmakers this week. I would be remiss if I failed to introduce the remainder of my leadership team for this year. Larry Rozier, North Carolina, National Historian. Ron Derrick, Idaho, National Chaplain. Al Polito, Indiana, National Sergeant of Arms. And of course, I'm not going to forget my wife, Vicki. The primary function of the federal government is to ensure the security of the American people. By using the deficit budget and defense budget, and therefore our military readiness, as a political football, our elected officials are failing to carry out their constitutional duties to provide for common defense. If Congress and administration do not take action before March 1st, the Department of Defense will suffer disastrous mandatory cuts of $500 billion, on top of the nearly $500 billion its cuts already enacted. This is unacceptable. Let your elected officials know that you expect them to work this out and avoid sequestration, period. As your national commander, I set a goal to raise $500,000 for Operation Comfort Warriors, and you've been responding big time. Just last week, we surpassed the $300,000 mark. I encourage all of you to take time to stop by our Operation Comfort Warrior booth this week. I have been humbled and honored to have personally delivered some of the donations to our wounded warriors down in Georgia. Next week, I'll be at another Operation Comfort Warrior visit to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. When you're collecting donations for this program, don't forget to remind folks that every dime of their contribution, every dime goes to the troops, each and every penny. I would like to comment briefly on Distinguished Warfare Medal. These brave soldiers will forever be changed, and the American Legion wants to make sure that the awards and commendations that they receive through their sacrifice and suffice are not diminished by the introduction of Department of Defense new Distinguished Warfare Medal. While the medal, which could be earned for extraordinary service to the war effort by the launching drones and cyber warfare attacks from places like Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas or Tampa, Florida. It's certainly worth considering, but it certainly should not rank higher than the medals of honor that are earned at the cost of American lives. No such medal should outrank medals that are awarded to troops who are in harm's way and are definitely should not take precedence over the Purple Heart and Bronze Star. The soldiers of whom will make a career out of their military service will be depending on TRICARE for themselves and their families as part of the retirement compensation package. Yet, out-of-the-pocket TRICARE costs have gone up twice in just this past year alone. Americans who have dedicated their personal and professional lives to defending this country used to be able to return to their military treatment facilities for the health care they were promised once they retired. Sadly, Department of Defense and Congress decided that it would be better to outsource part of their care and start pushing our retirees out of the military facilities. Now, retiree health care is being blamed for everything from Department of Defense not being combat ready to military raising being in jeopardy. Making sure Congress knows to tell Department of Defense to leave TRICARE alone and stop insulting us by taking money away from military retirees and their families in an attempt to balance the budget. Speaking of health care, access to and quality mental health care for veterans is one of the American Legion's top priorities. We're concerned about the unprecedented numbers of service members who have returned from Iraq and are still returning from Afghanistan with traumatic brain injury, or PTSD. 1.5 million veterans have separated from service during the Iraq and Afghanistan era, but only 50% of these veterans receive health care in the VA. The American Legion is concerned about the remaining 44% who may have fallen through the cracks because, according to VA, 53% of these veterans are still being diagnosed and treated for mental health disorders. Finally, the Department of Defense provides some of its best vocational training in the nation for my military personnel. And there are a great many occupational career fields that can easily translate into a civilian job. But many of these occupations require veterans to obtain a license or certification in the civilian sector before they can go to work. Every year, skilled service members leaving the armed forces miss out on the chance to quickly move into good, high-paying, career-building jobs. Why? Because they have to repeat a lengthy and expensive civilian retraining program in order to meet their job licensure and certification requirements, often for the exact same thing that they held while they were in the military. While the federal government has played a limited role in certification and licensing arena, state and local governments have the private sector to play a much larger role. To make the largest impact possible for veterans to quickly get civilian jobs, everyone needs to be on the same page. The federal government, Department of Defense, all 50 states, and all of the private and business organizations. The federal government is uniquely situated and is obligated to take the lead on this jobs issue, not only to overcome old attitudes, but to set the example. My fellow Legionnaires, you're here to make sure that your elected leaders know where they can make the most impact and help the veteran community the best. While you may not see the effects of your work today, before you leave Washington, D.C., just remember, these efforts and your voices matter. Your elected officials will listen to you because they know that you represent the greatest military service organization on the planet. You represent the American Legion. When you charge the Hill later today and tomorrow, remember that we are armed with the drop sheets to leave in each and every office you visit, and the point paper package to give you a deeper understanding and background and all the items on the drop sheet. I urge you to go visit your elected officials and brief them on these legislative priorities that are set forth by the American Legion. Number one, state the Legion's position clearly, concisely. Number two, don't let them sidetrack you into discussions other than legislative issues. Stick to your guns. If they ask you for more information on the Legion's position, let them know that we have a full-time team here in Washington, D.C. that will work with them and their staff for as long as necessary to get the job done. Number three, our nation's military and veterans are facing a number of challenges, and it's your job to let the members of Congress know. It's your job to influence them to take our position and fight for what is right for those who have served this country. Thank you.